Week two. Kamard, what's up, my brother?
Doing great, brother. How about you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of us.
As am I.
We actually followed through. We're here 2 weeks in a row. I think if we get to 2, we can get to 3.
I agree. And you've had some hurdles that you've had to jump over, fighting a little bug there. So again, I'm proud of us too, man. The consistent, we moved the date. So yeah, we both showing up, man. We're here.
No doubt. So still fighting the bug a little bit, but we gonna power through it. So as we spoke, last week, still trying to put this show together and figure out exactly what the vibe of this show is, but we definitely said we want to make sure we bring, relevant and real-time topics to the community. We just want to kind of, talk about different things, right? Spice it up, mix it up a little bit. And I thought that tonight it would be really, really cool to talk about something that's a little bit bittersweet, man, because honestly, it's not fun to talk about this kind of stuff because, people lose their lives, lose their livelihoods, in these type of situations. But, these tragic accidents that are happening, on the road involving trucks every day. I don't know the exact stat, but I think if somebody could go take a look, Quake, maybe you take a look how many truck accidents we have a day. And out of those accidents, how many result in fatalities, major injuries, and so forth and so on. It's astronomical and it's a lot. And when that happens, two sides get hurt. Obviously, there's the victim who, depending on who's at fault, whatever kind of happens, how that plays out. And we'll talk about that. But there's obviously people who are involved on both sides who get hurt. Companies get hurt. Sometimes companies are shut down and go out of business because of situations like this. So it's really terrible on both sides. And just recently, last week, we had a celebrity, that was involved in a truck accident. Now, the details surrounding the accident are not totally clear to me right now, because I know that people were saying different things when it first happened. Some people were saying that, and we're talking about Angie Stone, by the way. So Angie Stone is an R&B singer. She's very celebrated, amazing artist, been around for probably in the industry 30 plus years and had a really hell of a career. So rest in peace to her and condolences to her family first and foremost. But she was involved in an accident, and where the first that they were saying that she was hit by a truck, and then the Sprinter van that she was in, she was, I believe, going to a show. It tumbled 3 or 4 times in. Well, first the driver somehow lost control. No, first, I'm sorry. First they're saying she was hit by the truck, and then the van rolled, right? And that's what caused the van to roll. So they were blaming it on a truck driver. Somebody caused this incident. Then they were saying, nope, that's not exactly what happened. Her driver fell asleep or something to that effect. And don't quote me because I'm not sure of all the details yet. And then that maybe caused him to go out of control, spun, and then the van was hit by the truck. Right. So there's different circumstances that, or details that are kind of, circulating, and we don't know all the details yet. So we want to be careful to, kind of state that we know the details. But regardless to that, when something like this happens, there's going to be a lot of investigations going on. Right. There's going to be a lot of people that are involved and a lot of questions that are going to be asked, especially with somebody of this status, because it just brings a light and sheds a light on it even more. Right. This happens every day to normal people. But when it happens to a celebrity, there's more of a light cast on that. And I just wanted to talk about that. So today we have some special guests. We have 2 attorneys that we brought up, that we're bringing up. So we have Miss Sophia Bernard, and we also have Naru Witherspoon, and they'll talk about what they do. And then we also have Eric Ball, who's an actual DOT officer, who is one of the first to respond and arrive on the scene when these type of things happen. So my goal for this stream is to, number one, talk about when an incident like this happens, what's the first thing that happens, right? As soon as you get it, what's the first response from the officers going out? What are they looking for? What are they thinking about? How they start to gather the information and the evidence? And then after that, where does this kind of go to where we get to these outcomes where you have like a Tracy Morgan with $100 million lawsuit, right? Because this Walmart truck hit him and so forth and so on. So I just want to talk about that. And most importantly, we want to keep the motoring public safe. Right. So we want to talk about how carriers can prevent and protect the motoring public. Obviously, number one, by being compliant, making sure they're on top of everything like they're supposed to be, and just different things that we could do to protect yourselves. And if you are in an incident on the other side, what you need to do as well. Right. So we want to speak from both sides. We want to be non-biased because we have people from both sides. So we're going to bring them up and talk about that. Kamard, I want you to kind of add to that, especially you, because you are in the tire business. which is like a part of maintenance, right? And a part of like the truck, making sure that there's no wear and tear on the tires. And a lot of times, man, you have a blowout, that could be the cause of an accident. So speak to that real quick before we bring our guests up and tell me what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, the mission of GTT Commercial Tires is aiming to keep roads safer. And one of the ways we do that is obviously supplying vehicles, whether it's trucks or passenger vehicles, with good tires. And I mean, it's a shame to see how many accidents are as a result of faulty tires, right? Because I mean, for the vast majority, and I could be wrong about this, but majority of the states that I'm aware of, they have some kind of inspection process in place where brakes are being checked, windshield wipers are being checked, the lights are being checked, tires are being checked. And so it is it's something that I think we all need. We all could benefit from playing a larger part in just being more conscious around what the state of our tires are. And if we are unaware of it, if we're uneducated of how to actually gauge that, partner with a local tire store somewhere, wherever you are, wherever it's convenient for you, because there are a lot of accidents and fatalities that are as a result of, you know, faulty tires. We had an accident here in Virginia several months back. It was a devastating situation. And, you know, again, I don't know all of the details about it as well, but there was one report that came out and said that it was a faulty tire that was there, in the sense of it just had low tread that was below the DOT regulations. And it caused for an accident that definitely resulted in a death. And, you know, that's tough because to a degree, that stuff is preventable, Rahmel. You know, we can get
100%.
around that, man. And so whether you're buying tires from us or not, I just really think that the advocacy around road safety and tires being one of those things, right? No different than like truckers being arrested or any driver being arrested, right? It's not just a trucker thing. There's plenty of people that are behind the wheel leaving work, you know, maybe they work two jobs and, you know, they're burnt out, but they're driving. And so, you know, I just think we just need to, the way that we see the push around the DUI scenario, right? And how it's like a real thing because there have been so many travesties and deaths that have been associated with people driving under the influence of something. I think we really need to start getting more serious around how we can push and advocate for, you know, rest. And then also just from a maintenance perspective on the tire side, because those are where the accidents are going to come from. And of course, brakes too, you know, brakes,
Yeah, brakes and tires for sure.
lights, all of that stuff that, you know, is kind of like oversight. Oftentimes it's like, I got gas in the car, the engine transmission is good, I'm going. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit more to it than that, because more times than not, those aren't the things that are going to cause an accident.
Yeah, for sure, man. So let's bring our panel up. Let's bring in Sophia, Eric, and Naru, and I'll let them introduce themselves and kind of talk about what they do professionally, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion. So I see Sophia's up first. So Sophia, first of all, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining this live. I know you're very, very, very busy. You guys are lucky because usually Sophia would cost about $1,000 an hour, and you happen to have her right now for free 99. So Sophia, introduce yourself and just tell people a little bit about your background.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Bernard. I am a transportation attorney. I'm a partner at Taylor Nelson. We're a firm based out of Florida, but we service the transportation industry pretty much nationwide. I mean, I handle cases in California, Oregon, New York, anywhere really. I got in the industry. I was formerly a general counsel for a truck broker, and that's really how I was introduced into the industry and how I sort of, fell in love with it and gained my passion that way. And the interesting thing about my firm is, my partners and I, each one of us have previously been general counsel for a trucking company. And so we refer to ourselves as industry insiders because we truly understand what it's like to be inside the company and also to be an attorney that represents them on the outside.
100%. So you guys, for the most part, represent the trucking company, right?
Yeah, so brokers, motor carriers, those are typically our base clients.
100%. So let's go to you, Naru, because that's a great segue, because I don't think you represent the companies. You represent the people who are victims in these type of situations, right?
Absolutely. So I'm Naru Witherspoon. I'm one of the plaintiff's attorneys that's known nationally for representing people against, 18-wheeler companies and commercial vehicle companies. And so I'm kind of the attorney that they don't like to see. I've recovered jury verdicts for over 100 million against trucking companies, 158 million. But that's what I do. And, I'm on the other side of things.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you for joining us. So we might have like a live trial going on here, man. This might get interesting.
We are enemies.
And then Eric, you have a very interesting background. You are an entrepreneur. You own trucking companies. You've been in the industry. You also were a police officer and a DOT police officer specifically. And now you work as an expert witness for people like Naru. Right. So you kind of help the process. What would it be? The plaintiff side kind of prove their case. And you help somebody like Naru kind of speak on behalf of who? You explain it, because you can explain it better than I can.
Yes. So basically what I do is I work with Naru and I pretty much I try to find the different loopholes and stuff like that put the trucking companies and drivers at fault to show negligent on their behalf, when it comes to my investigation regarding the trucking company and the drivers. So essentially what I do, I hold them to the standard of the law, state, local, and federal law. And that's what my expertise and my background is in. So I hold them, to the state, local, and federal laws and find everything I could against the company, show the reason why they at fault and they negligent.
For sure. So we have people represent all sides of the coin here. And mind you, this is cautionary because we never want anybody to necessarily be in these type of situations, right? We want to make sure the motoring public is safe. We don't want you to have what'd you say, Naru, $100 and something million verdict where your company is paying that. And if you're paying that, you out of business for the most part. Like you're done, right? It's over. So that's not what we want. So this is just... We want to tell the story from both sides so you as the viewer can understand whatever part you play or wherever you kind of fit into this puzzle, what you need to do to keep yourself out of these type of situations, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
100%. All right, so this is where I want to start. Who do any of you guys know the details on the situation that happened with Angie Stone?
I know what you mentioned is really what I know.
Okay.
I didn't know the part that you mentioned about the driver falling asleep. I did know that, the Mercedes Sprinter van was flipped over prior to the impact. I think it's important to know how it got flipped over, and that piece I think is missing. It could be that the driver fell asleep, or maybe something was wrong with the Mercedes Sprinter van. And then we know that a tractor impacted it when it was already flipped over. But outside of those set of facts, I don't know much about the incident.
And I think people were speculating when they said the driver fell asleep because they really don't know. So here's the last report that I got. So it says, Angie Stone tragically passed away on March 1st, 2025 at 63 following a car accident in Montgomery, Alabama. The incident occurred around 4:25 a.m. on Interstate 65, approximately 5 miles south of Montgomery. Stone was traveling in a 2021 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van with 8 others, including her band members, returning to Atlanta after performing in Alabama. The van overturned and was subsequently struck by a 2021 Freightliner Cascadia truck. And then obviously she was pronounced dead at the scene, while the other occupants sustained injuries but were transported to the hospital. I believe everybody else survived except for her. So again, rest in peace to her. That is an extremely unfortunate situation. But in that kind of situation, Eric, because I'm sure you've been in these type of situations where there is a accident like that, what happens?
Of course, you have crash investigators. They'll come out and from the side of when you're talking about the actual Sprinter van, they're gonna look at the the mechanic part of the Sprinter van. They probably will get with the actual owner of the Sprinter van to see if they keep documents, if that is at least Sprinter van as a business, to see if they keep documents regarding the maintenance of that particular vehicle. From there, they'll definitely try to preserve the evidence at the scene where you're taking a bunch of pictures. You're going to do measurements of skid marks, you're going to, debris, things like that, right? Because you want to kind of figure out what happened before the actual impact. And then from there, you also kind of you'll do some more investigation so you can kind of figure out what the people was doing before they even got on the road. So you want to know, hey, was these people, what exactly was Angie Stone and her team doing before they got on the road and started driving? Was they hanging out all night? Was they drinking? Things like that, you know what I'm saying? So you'll try to make contact probably with the venue or somebody that's close to the individuals, or talk to any of the surviving people to try to figure out exactly what they was doing before they got on the road, and then try to see exactly what happened based on the evidence at the scene leading up to the actual impact. And then you'll want to know exactly what happened at impact. That'll be a part of the investigation. And then the aftermath, and then also on the aftermath is exactly, what the autopsy say, things like that for those that actually died. And then on the 18-wheeler side, right, same thing. You're gonna dive into the logs. You want to know exactly what the truck driver was doing, within his prior 7 days, what he was doing before the accident, at the impact of the accident, and then what was the damage after the accidents. So we always looking at we look at impact, and then post collision.
For sure. And we all know, typically when there's an accident like that and a tractor trailer is on the scene and involved in any type of way, right? That's going to be what everybody's looking at. It's the large billboard. So some way, shape, or form, someone will most likely try to drag that tractor trailer into some sort of fault, right? So talk to me about, how and this is for you, Sophia, when an incident like that happens, what are the things that the company needs to kind of present, or they need to do to kind of help themselves out in a situation like that? So in this situation, it's like maybe the truck is not the one who caused the accident, but it was after the accident happened, it happened to be coming on the same path. But how do we really know? Like maybe they were, going back and forth. Maybe they were swerving in the road before that. Maybe it was road rage. We don't know all these things that someone could try to link this truck to the actual cause of the accident. So what would happen after that?
So the best way to really protect yourself against, in this type of accident is what you do before the accident, well before the accident even happens. You want to make sure that you're advising, clients to make sure they have a robust safety department with policies around safety, making sure that drivers are following the regulations, and making sure that the hours of service is probably the most important one in these situations, are not violated. Making sure that drivers are not having substance abuse problems. So you want to make sure drivers are clean, they're qualified, and they're basically fit to be driving. You want to make sure that the company's website is another huge important factor, is presented in a way that doesn't really give the other side any sort of sound bites to use at trial, and sort of make it seem like the company is all about profits, all about making sure that they're able to proceed with the business without any regard to the safety of the community. So making sure that the company is presented in the best possible light well before any accident ever happens. When the accident actually does happen, it's important that that we're investigating, similar to what Eric is suggesting, right? We want to make sure that we're looking at those trip reports, pre-trip, post-trip reports. We want to make sure that we're looking at the driver log, make sure everything is clean there. We want to make sure that our driver is going for his DOT drug testing, making sure that comes back clean. And we want to know what happened leading up to the accident. Was there any sort of distraction? Is there a dash cam that we can look at so we can get a real view of how the accident actually happened?
Got it. And so Naru, I'll pass it to you. Where, in your experience, do people get tripped up? Where is usually the bottleneck where people aren't doing the preventative things that Sophia is referring to where you usually are able to find these like, gotcha. That's where you messed up. That's where I gotcha. You done messed up now, right?
Right. You messed up.
You messed up, right?
It's I will say from my standpoint as a plaintiff's attorney, to be really good at what I do, I have to look at things from both sides, because it's not always the trucking company or truck driver's fault. we talked about fatigue earlier. And so fatigue, distracted driving is probably one of the number one causes for trucking accidents, but that can go both ways, right? So sometimes you have motorists that they've been driving long hours. Sometimes it's the truck drivers, you know, and, you know, people still, for whatever reason, you know, they're looking at their cell phones, they're on TikTok while they're driving. And so that's both ways. I mean, those are problems. And so what we do is look at the, you know, the length of the number of hours. You know, there are federal rules that limit the or restrict the number of hours that drivers can operate. And so that's in the trucking industry, but there are no rules that sort of say how many hours individuals can drive. And people don't really know what their limits are. I mean, I have friends that will say, man, I drove 12 hours, 14 hours straight. And, you know, so what we do is just kind of check off boxes. You know, they're just boxes we check off you know, most of the time it's usually going to be driver fatigue. I think that's probably the number one, or distracted driving. Those are probably our number one, you know, things that we find as the causes of these major crashes.
Now, out of the cases that are brought to you, how many times are you, like, what's the ratio of numbers that you're usually able to prove some sort of guilt on the actual driver or the trucking company? And does it usually fall on the driver, or does it normally fall on the company, or does it fall on both, right? Because the driver could do something wrong, but maybe there's a aspect where the company didn't do something that made the driver out of compliance.
Yeah, so I will say this, the trucking industry is similar to a lot of industries, to the extent that really good people are hard to find, right? And so there are problems, you know, in that industry, like any other, and even the legal, you know, finding people that can do the job and do the job really well. So we found that the problem is in that, you know, who you're hiring, you know, to get behind the wheel. Some companies cut corners, you know, and they hire people that have had a history of driving poorly, a history of speeding and citations. And you know what? Hey, I can get this guy on the low, so let me just pay him peanuts and put him behind the wheel. So that's what keeps the company on the hook when they hire people that they know they shouldn't have hired in the first place. Companies sometimes don't do the type of training that they should do. But it's a lot, you know, that's hard for companies to do when you gotta, hey, load up this truck, get it to point A, back to point B. And to take the time out, you're not making money when you're training. You know what I mean? You're not making money when you're, hey, let's talk about your pre-trip, post-trip. Let's talk about that citation that you got on your way to New Orleans. Let's have a conversation about that. If you get one more citation, we got to let you go. Sometimes those hard conversations aren't being had. So, you know, these guys just stay behind the wheel, and unfortunately, you know, bad things can happen.
Yeah.
I'll say, so this is, I would have to disagree with everything that we just said.
All right, I like it. I like it. That's what I was waiting for.
And if Noor and I were in a case and we were adverse with each other, these are the issues that we're going to be fighting and bumping heads about. And we're probably going to have motion practice about it. I'm probably going to do a bunch of motion and limines about that. But, you know, I disagree, because I think that truck drivers are good people. If you sit down and actually talk to a truck driver, they are good people. They're just trying to make a living and support their families. And sometimes some of these issues with the driving records that plaintiffs' attorneys would try to point to, they're very minor issues that an average person is going to have. It's nothing that objectively looks like this person is unfit to drive. If that were the case, you know, I can't speak for all trucking companies, but they wouldn't be hired, right? So accidents unfortunately do happen, and sometimes when an accident does happen, it's not really because of something the driver did. It just was an unavoidable accident. That said, the law still, you know, wants to put liability on someone, so it's still going to be a valid case, but it doesn't mean that something was inherently wrong with what the driver or the company did, or that the company is trying to put profits over people. It's just really a circumstance that happened. And so my job, really, I try to humanize my clients, because I think that the public doesn't really see that. I think we had a really good opportunity during COVID to humanize drivers, because the trucking industry essentially, saved the country, to be a little dramatic. If it wasn't for truck drivers and trucks, running resources, from north to south, east to west, we would be with a lot during the lockdown. The world could have been shut down during that time, and the trucking industry really kept it alive. So it's important to just really humanize them as people, and to understand that accidents just happen sometimes, and it's really not the fault of anyone. It just happens. That said, I think there's still a place where we can come together and try to make it right for the party that is hurt from the accident.
Let me add something real quick, because Naru, I see you want to say something, but I'm just going to throw this in here real fast, right? So I was a Smith System driver trainer, right? And just basically defensive driver training. And one of the things that they taught us and they instilled in us when I was doing that for years is there's really almost no such thing as a non-preventable accident, right? Like almost every accident is preventable, unless like another vehicle falls out the sky. There was something that could have been done that could have prevented that accident. So I'm because you just now said some things just happen. When we would say something's just happened, they slap us on the wrist, say, no, nothing just happens. There was always some root cause, and every accident, 99% is preventable. It may not, it could be following distance. It could be you didn't look ahead enough. It could be you didn't leave yourself enough room on the left or the right, right? There's always these little things, but every accident is preventable. So I'm just going to leave that there. And then Naru, go ahead, jump.
I actually agree with you. I agree with you. And just to walk it back a little bit, I do believe that accidents just happen, but you're right. Things can be avoided. But it's really about like the minutes and the seconds it takes for these things to happen. Not that you couldn't have stopped it, but it's very difficult to be 100% perfect for anyone, even all of us sitting here right now.
For sure. Naru. Yeah. Oh, come on. You got something real quick?
Yeah. Along the lines of what Sophia is saying, right? When we really take the totality of this thing and we just take out truckers and we take out passenger road travelers, right? We're all human beings. And so if we go with the notion, like when you were in that training, which I'm not condemning at all, obviously they were looking for you guys to train up and make people as close to perfect as possible. But I think that is inherently already set up to fail, because if we take that same notion and look on just life as a whole, whether that is us as adults and how we deal with children, how we deal with our spouses, how we perform and show up at work, it to me sounds as if we've created an environment where there is no allotment for error. And I just think, again, if we're thinking about how we are as human beings, we are error filled. That's just how it works to be a human being. And so to have a scenario where the framework, where it seems like we just all kind of talked about, or at least Rahmel and myself and Sophia, the trucker, as soon as that is tied to an accident, oh, you're at fault. Yep, you did something wrong. And to your point, Rahmel, there are some organizations that I'm affiliated with on the trucking side that are performing great training for their drivers. They are making sure that these guys are getting their physicals, their medical. Obviously, the trucking industry is under the scrutiny and regulation of DOT. I wouldn't say scrutiny, the regulation of DOT, which is great. So they definitely have a higher barrier to clear than that passenger driver, like we all are. And like Naru said, there is a lot of fatigue going on, not just on the trucker side. I mean, with the rise of rideshare itself, you got a lot of people that are doing a lot of things, whether that is the Ubers and the Lyfts, or even doing the Amazon stuff, right? Or any of the last mile. And so all I'm saying is there's a lot of factors that go into it, but oftentimes it just seems as if the trucking company and or the trucker behind the wheel is being nailed to the cross and crucified for any involvement in an accident. And obviously it sounds like, Eric is doing a great job of going in with an unbiased approach and really looking at it, even though he is more so on the plaintiff side. But obviously, if the drivers were at fault on the passenger vehicle side, then, that needs to come out, which I'm imagining does, in the cases that he's a part of. But how much of that is really the tenor around the country? Because, again, it's almost like a get out of jail free card when you may have been the person that caused this issue, even though there's other things we could have looked at. He could have been going slower. He could have. Yeah, sure. But if we take that approach with everything that happens in life, I think we would be very shocked at what it would look like in the sense of no benefit of the doubt that others would be given, whether we talk about the workplace or just, overall social dynamics.
Talk to him, Naru. I see you over there, man. You've been moving around in your chair. You like, man, let me get on this mic.
Well, I don't believe that accidents just happen. Okay, I just don't. And I think that if you ever hire an attorney that tells you, at least on the plaintiff side, that accidents just happen, run. Imagine getting on an airplane, and that airplane, you're on it with your family, your kids, and it crashes. Okay, you don't want to hear from the airlines, hey man, accidents just happen. Okay. The problem with this idea that accidents just happen is, motor carriers, airlines, the airlines, I mean, they have millions of people that they're traveling and responsible for to get them safe to their destinations. And with trucks, they do a lot of damage. I mean, you get into an accident with the truck, chances are you're not walking away from that. You're just not. And so somebody's going to have to call your family and say, hey, I'm sorry, but your loved one was in an accident with the truck. And you don't want them to say, hey, I'm sorry, accidents just happen.
Yeah.
So my job is to work with the accident recon team, to work with the accident investigators and figure out, if in fact this was avoidable. I think there's a good balance. I mean, I think there's a lot that, people on both sides that work for the trucking companies, people on my side, I think we probably should be having more conversations because, it's unpleasant, when you meet someone and they say, hey, my spouse, they left for work this morning and they never made it home for supper. And
that's
so
right.
That's kind of, how I see it.
I think the difference,
Go ahead, Sophia.
Just to call a difference between like an airline incident and a truck incident is airline incidents are usually, until recently, singular. There's only one party involved. It's that one airplane. It's usually not two airplanes colliding together. But in this case, right, we know that the Sprinter was flipped upside down. We don't know how it got there, and we know that the truck impacted it. In this case, I think that a large part of the conversation is going to focus around what the truck driver did. He's 33 years old. I think I read that somewhere. What did the truck driver do wrong? And there's not going to be much conversation about what the driver of the Sprinter van did wrong. And there was two people involved in the accident. So accidents don't just happen at all time, but accidents are not always the fault of the truck driver. A lot of times it's the fault of the distracted driving by people in commercial and personal vehicles. People are, texting all the time and recklessly driving in between trucks and not really taking into consideration that there's a blind spot on that truck. That trucker cannot always see you if you're in that blind spot. So these things happen, but there is a lot on the part of the person in a private vehicle as well.
Yeah, that's the same.
Can I add to something?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. I want to add to that. I'm gonna tell y'all about it. An investigation probably happened about a decade ago. What happened was it was early in the morning. So when I mean by early in the morning, about 4 or 5 in the morning. So the traffic was very, very light on the highway. Really no cars was out. A particular car had broke down. It was in the lane of traffic on the highway. The highway is a 4-lane highway. You can clearly see on video how the truck actually had enough time, if he was paying attention ahead, based off of what Rahmel was saying, if he used the Smith system, saying driving instructions. And that driver just ran directly into the car as the person was in the car and killed, saying the car exploded, driver inside the car ended up dying, right? Yes, when you look at it from a, just say from a criminal standpoint, that driver was in the middle of the roadway. That truck driver wasn't at fault because the driver, he didn't have hazards lights on, anything like that. Yes, the area, right, even though it was dark outside because it was 4 or 5 in the morning, but the area was well lit, where if that driver was paying attention, saying ahead of him, he'd had enough time to move over. There was no other cars around. So from a criminal side, the driver wasn't deemed at fault. He wasn't issued no citation. The victim, essentially was impeding traffic. It was, that car was in the middle of, in the middle of the lane of traffic. Now, from a civil standpoint, it was a lot of different issues that, was able to be pointed out. And one of those issues was that it was a good video footage. It was a well-lit area, even though it was dark, that driver had more than enough time to actually change lanes safely to prevent that accident. So from the civil side, that driver and that company was held liable, from several different, issues that driver did not do in the 18-wheeler. So I'm kind of a fan. I'm kind of a fan of that. Almost every accident can almost be prevented in a sense. I mean, I had number of, I don't think I'll say I had number. And when I say had number, I'll put it at least 80 to 90% minimum, that it can be prevented. I was a Smith driver instructor as well, Rahmel, so I definitely understand those principles that was taught. And if drivers implement that, even cars, regular vehicles implement what the Smith system say, it can prevent a lot of accidents. One thing that is a rumor that I've learned in the industry, that 18-wheelers are told, don't try to make an evasive lane change because they can potentially jackknife and or hurt themselves even worse. So a lot of them just run straight through stuff. And because of that, that's the reason why that particular, 18-wheeler with the example I was given, he never switched lanes because he just simply just ran straight through. But I really feel like that if these guys are really, really implementing, the good training that they should receive, that they can potentially prevent accidents.
And that can be a similar to scenario to what may have occurred with Angie Stone, right? Because someone may argue that, hey, the impact from the truck is what actually killed her, right? Like it wasn't the Sprinter van flipping, it was the truck didn't move, it had time, and that's what killed her. So I'm going to ask this question. Naru, do you think that trucking company will be brought into litigation and they will be sued? Even though right now it looks like, it just was a happenstance. The Sprinter van flipped, and then because of that, they had nowhere to go. What do you think will happen in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I think they will, and I think they should be. I mean, so what I do, I sue everybody.
I don't mean to laugh, but
everybody's getting sued, right? And the reason why everybody's getting sued is because in this tragic situation, Angie Stone was a passenger. So one thing we do know is that she didn't do anything wrong.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so, as a plaintiff's attorney, I sue everybody, and I sue everybody because we're going to sort it out. We're going to find out if the driver of the vehicle that she was in is at fault. We're going to find out if the subsequent crash, if they had enough time to react and avoid the collision. And, juries assist in this too. I mean, once we take a case to trial, there's a jury charge, and on that jury charge, it lists all the people that got sued, and the jury can assign responsibility to who they ultimately think is responsible. And sometimes they say, "Hey, I think both of y'all are responsible," and they decide accordingly.
For sure. Now, Sophia, if you're representing said trucking company, I mean, obviously we don't have all the facts, but what do you when you activate, your superpowers, what are you thinking in a case like this?
In a case like this, Nuru's right. Angie Stone, obviously, she's a passenger, so she's not at fault. So I think this is a case that I would probably be looking at from the perspective of risk management and, trying to get the best possible outcome that's going to benefit all the parties involved. I think, when you're thinking nuclear verdict, I think just with the facts that we do know, this is a case that would potentially become a nuclear verdict, especially if, let's say, Angie Stone is going to have, a wrongful death claim, and her kids are going to, and she was supporting her kids, and so they're going to claim that they're no longer being able to get support from their mother because she's not here. She's a high earner. So if you just look at her income alone, I mean, it's going to be a lot. You look at her, her life from today until I think the mortality tables might have her, go up to 65 or 70 for her. And so the amount of money that she would have made from now until the mortality tables say that the likelihood that she would have been deceased at that point, it's going to be a lot. So liability in this case, we don't really know. Risk management in this case, it's probably something where we will consider trying to find a resolution just to avoid, inflaming the jury with some of these facts. I mean, she had a family, she was grandmother, had grandkids. I think this is one that gets very messy, very sticky, really fast.
So is there any way that the trucking company is exonerated and, no fault, they're out of it? Or do you think that they'll be pretty much tied in this case in some way, shape, or form, and they're going to have to kind of pay something?
Legally, I don't think there's a way that they can use, case law to argue no liability, even though there might not be any liability. I think this is something that is going to go to a jury. So when it gets to the jury, it's really a question of what those 6 people or 12 people in the box are going to think about the case. And I think they're going to be very sympathetic because of her notoriety and the fact that she is this woman that supported all these people and was beloved by people across the United States. I think it's going to be probably similar to Tracy Morgan in a way.
Naru, how do we come up with these numbers, man? 100 million, 150, 200 million, 300 million, 100 million. Where do they come from? I mean, Sophia just now spoke about the mortality table. We get that, right? But when you go on your website, you see all these astronomical numbers, and it's not Tracy Morgan, right? So how do you come up with these numbers, and just explain what a nuclear verdict is and how you arrive at these crazy astronomical numbers?
Sure. So those numbers are not crazy. They're not astronomical. Those numbers are very fair. And I'm going to tell you why. Because jury verdicts that are in the $100 and $158 million range, like we recovered, those numbers only represent a fraction of what the market cap or what the worth of the company is. So one of the cases was against Amtrak. Amtrak is worth $15 billion. So the verdict, or most of that, was what's called punitive damages. So when you can show that a company was reckless, and you can show that the company was reckless because of some past knowledge or some past acts that happened before, and it happened over and over again, and they didn't do anything to remedy the situation. That's when courts allow juries to come up with the number to punish them, because they didn't change the behavior. You had an opportunity to change the behavior. You knew about the behavior, and had you changed it, had you done something different, maybe somebody wouldn't have lost, their father or their husband or their wife. And so that's the only way, unfortunately, that you can get some companies to change. Not just trucking, but just companies in general. If companies have notice of some sort of safety problem, and it's causing fatalities and human lives are being lost. I mean, that to me is the only way, and it's very fair to penalize that company in a way that they say, okay, you know what, we need to make some changes.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, like, you can't put a price on human lives, right? So I don't want to say, when I say astronomical, I don't want to, minimize the price of life, because life is invaluable, right? Like, you can't put a price on that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
I think you make the point, because I don't think anybody, regardless of the side that you're on, wants to be, in this situation, because from the trucking company side, I mean, this is how people provide for their families. And this is how all of us, receive, the products that we order from Amazon and so on and so forth, the groceries we buy. And then on the flip side, I hate, for people to walk into my doors and say, hey, I lost my loved one. And if we could, I think we all would just kind of take it all back. And this,
for sure,
this never happened.
What is the net effect of these type of incidents, right? You have these nuclear verdicts, and when these type of things happen, how does it set precedents for like the next time it happens? And what's the net effect? How does it affect like things on a larger scale? If that question makes sense to you guys, and anybody answer it.
I think the net effect is that I think the more it gets talked about, the more people get scared about it, and the more it becomes a real thing. The other effect that these things sort of have is a lot of these trucking companies, these motor carriers, they're small businesses. They're entrepreneurs who are really just trying to make a way, and a lot of times, because of a nuclear verdict, they are, as you mentioned, Ramel, earlier, they get put out of business really fast. So that's another effect of these things. And sometimes, you hear these numbers, 100 million, 100 billion, and they actually never really get paid because there isn't any real money, or it gets held up in appeals, and maybe the appeal court finds that it was a crazy number with respect to the individual. Because I think you're right. One thing I hate doing is putting a value on someone's life. No one's life has a number, and that's probably the worst part of all of this, to be honest. But yeah, so sometimes those numbers can be just for billboards. Sometimes they are actually really really paid. I'm not saying that that's always the case. They do get paid, but there's one case that I could think of where there was like $100 million verdict, and it was to a company that no longer existed. So no one got paid that, but that that number gets floated around, and it causes like a ripple effect of higher premiums, and people not being able to afford those higher premiums.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, right? The insurance prices go up, and the insurance industry is affected, and well, at least they'll claim they're affected, and they're going to pass that on to the carriers. So now the carriers are paying more, and the insurance company's going to say, well, there's all these accidents you guys are happening. You see all these nuclear verdicts, and now we got to charge you more. So what happens in that case, Naru, when somebody doesn't get paid? How did the proceedings happen? Like once the individual's awarded the verdict, what's the process after that? Do they have to go and collect that money, or what happens?
Yeah. So in my cases, the verdicts we were able to collect on the verdicts because we're dealing with companies that have billion-dollar market caps. So above and beyond the insurance, these companies are making billions from the general public. And so I think at a minimum, if the general public is affording you billions, then you need to do everything you can to make sure that they're safe. So I think the net effect is safer for everybody, and I just don't like the idea, and obviously I'm biased. I mean, think about Tesla, for example. I'm not an Elon Musk fan, but I know that when he rolled out the Teslas, I mean, people are just buying them and getting in them and don't know these things have a mind of their own. They're exploding and all this kind of stuff. Don't use me as a guinea pig. Do all your testing and make sure that these things are self-driving and all this nonsense. And then you have all these people using this self-driving, and they say, oh, it's not really self-driving. Like, well, why you call it self-driving? And then, if they get hit with a big jury verdict, people go blaming, the plaintiff's lawyers, and, oh, they shouldn't get all this money. They should get all this money, because that's the only way that talks to people. Money, making people pay is the only language some people speak.
So does it really change anything though? Right? Like when, in your experience, making people pay, has it made any real difference, or do you just continue to pay? Like, do you see any change out of it? Are people doing different? Are they doing better?
I like to answer that. So I think so. There has been change, but not in the way that I think your question is geared towards. Because first, the real question is, was it ever really unsafe? And I argue that it was never really unsafe, and so there really wasn't anything to fix. I think these regulations are always looked at and they're always improved. Now, on the other side, because of these nuclear verdicts, states are starting to wake up because there is a ripple effect that does affect the economy as well. And so one of that, which Florida is a front runner for, is tort reform. And tort reform, really took speed because of these nuclear verdicts and because of a way to sort of contain them. And the tort reform of Florida, if, for example, the Angie Stone accident happened in Florida, and let's say that driver of the Sprinter van is found to be like 51% at fault, no one is going to recover if that happens in Florida. Florida's finding a ways to get control of these medical bills so that, the medical bills aren't getting so out of control where it's blowing up these cases and making them worth more than they actually are. So I think every single state right now is trying to push and advocate for some sort of tort reform to contain these nuclear verdicts and sort of bring things back down, because the roads weren't really that unsafe before.
What's your thoughts on that, Naru?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that safety is a constant. You know, I think companies, you know, are changing as they grow and realize. You know, let's say, for example, you know, these phones, these cell phones. You know, it wasn't a big deal until, you know, people didn't know that, okay, because you can see that there's a trend in distracted driving, you know, because of these phones, and people are, you know, now you can email, you can watch Netflix. I mean, you can do all kind of stuff, and you'll be surprised at some of the things that people do behind the wheel. So I do think that they force companies to kind of reevaluate what they're doing. You know, we had a case involving Amazon. And Amazon has all of its packages in sort of like a gated, protected, you know, area. And so in order to get into the area, you know, you have to go through a security booth. Okay. And so to get access, you know, you have to present the security team with, or I'm sorry, at one point you didn't have to present the security team with ID. So you could just kind of go in, and then you could retrieve the packages and then go make the deliveries. Well, prior to you know, us getting involved in a lawsuit and what we're calling a nuclear verdict, you know, people could just go in, get the packages, but after that, you know, they wouldn't let anybody in unless they presented, you know, a driver's license. They presented this, you know, so that kind of changed that practice, but you wouldn't know that, or maybe they didn't think about that in advance. You know, hey, we're just a warehouse. We store all these packages. People go online and order their Amazon stuff. We need our people to go and get the packages. Well, you know, now we're thinking now because of that, they're like, you know what, let's put this security booth here, and let's make sure that we're not letting just any and everybody come in and out of this secure area to get these packages. So, I mean, you know, you could give your buddy, you know, hey, I got this Amazon account. Hey, bro, go ahead and get these packages for me. But your buddy license is suspended. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that, you know, it's safety is a continuum, and safety is something that I think, you know, should be looked at on a regular basis, especially when you're a motor carrier operating a vehicle that weighs tons.
Got it. Now I want you to take off your Witherspoon Law hat for a moment, Naru, and let's help the small carriers out, right? Because typically you're against carriers, not specifically small carriers, but carriers in general. But if we're talking to small carriers right now watching this, what are some things that they could do or implement that would help them maybe preventatively to not find themselves in these type of situations? You talked about like cell phones, you know, upticks in cell phones. Like, should they have a cell phone policy? Should they get cameras in the vehicle? Like, what type of cameras are necessary? Like, where are the things that you're finding where it's like, these are the things that if you would have done that, or you would have had that in place, it could have potentially saved your company and your livelihood?
Okay. So I think with smaller carriers, I think that the conversation needs to take place around business and business development. It's not always about, you know, trucking and behind the wheel. I think that small carriers can sometimes want to grow too fast. Okay. Because it usually starts with like one truck, you know, small carrier, one truck. I'm the owner. And I realize, okay, you know what? I can only make so much money if I'm driving my truck. So I'm ready to expand. I got contracts. I got some opportunities. And I think sometimes when you're small, you need to slow down. And this is any business, you know, maybe do one or two at a time, but don't go from like a one driver, kind of one truck, you know, kind of company to now 15. Okay. Because you only had one truck. Now you got 15. And so you start pulling these guys. And so I think for me that I see a lot of that. And I see guys not really willing to make the hard decision to cut people loose, you know, if they make mistakes, because and I got a lot of guys that drive trucks. A couple of my buddies. I mean, this is how they make a living, and so the ones that do it really well, they like, man, you know what? I got to get this guy out of this truck. And so there's usually some sort of warning, some sort of indication. In your gut that, man, I got to make it tough. It might cost you a little money, but I think that's kind of what I would talk to, the smaller, truck companies to getting started, and they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Got you.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Okay. Just to add to that as well, like you say, from a business standpoint, most of the owners, they're trying to wear multiple hats. So you coming in, you just say if you're driving your truck, you essentially driving your truck. Or just say you got 3 trucks, right? You ain't driving your truck. I mean, you're essentially probably booking your loads. You're talking to brokers all day. You're talking to drivers. So it's almost impossible for you to, be aware of, safety issues. So it's almost impossible for them to be monitoring ELDs from time to time. Really focus in and when it comes to safety, and then another thing with that, a lot of times these owners don't even understand what it actually takes and what is required of them by the federal law and your local and state laws, saying to operate a trucking company. So in my opinion, I say when you building that team, not only do you want to scale your truck, you want to scale your team. You want to put professional people in place to help you run that company, even if it have to be somebody that's an accountant. You're not necessarily an accountant just because you're an owner. So you may want to hire somebody to specialize in that. You may want to hire somebody to specialize in actual, running your safety. Somebody that, specialize in, monitoring ELDs and things like that. And that's what they fail to do, small owners. They just want to add trucks, but then they don't want to add the other people to specialize in those different categories.
That's true. Sophia, what's your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
I agree with both of them. I would just add
hold on.
Go ahead, Sophia.
Sophia, ladies first.
Sorry. No, I was saying I agree with both advice to small carriers, and the other one is you need me on your team. I will tell you what they just said and show you how to do it.
100%. So, I mean, that's a great segue. So when you're working with small carriers or carriers in general, are you guys like implementing those type of things and looking at that before it happens?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on like the scope of the representation, right? So if I'm retained to do outside general counsel work, because as both mentioned, they're small and they might not have, they might not have the ability to like have their own legal department or safety or compliance, then we will step in and give them direction on how to do that and help them implement these different policies and procedures.
Got it. Nuru, what were you going to say?
I'm glad Sophia shared that, because I do think more people need to be aware of, attorneys, like Sophia that can tell them, hey, this is what needs to happen so you don't get sued. I mean, they need to hear it just like that. If you do this, you can avoid getting sued. If you don't do this, you're going to be sitting in front of a jury and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But I think that that's good because, to Eric's earlier point, if I'm getting started, where do I come up with the money, to pay for, an attorney to give me this advice, or, how? So they I think in all fairness, they need to know, okay, there's a consultant opportunity, or there's courses you can take, or here's how you do it to, so they that's probably the thought. Like, man, I ain't got, $200,000, to pay an attorney or to hire a safety director. And, so I think there are ways that these companies need to know it's not as crazy expensive as you think it is.
Yeah. Have you ever had a situation, Nuru, where you had to be on a plaintiff's side, but maybe you had some empathy for the company, and you were like, man, you know what, that it shouldn't have went that way, but it just is what it is. Have you ever had that kind of situation?
So no.
Without naming names?
No.
I had a feeling you was going to say that.
No, but I do. I try my best to have a conversation with the representative for, these entities. I really do try to have a conversation. most of the people on the other side, I'm just gonna say this, they don't look like me, and you know they are whether it's the ego or they're just pissed off because they're dealing with me. I'm just a consequence. Don't be mad at me. I'm just a consequence.
Right.
Okay? But what I try to do is say, hey, I think that if you consider this, you won't have to see guys like me as often. But man, you know, you'd be surprised, man. Attorneys, they don't want to talk about that. They just like, hey, I don't care. I'm just mad that you're here in the first place, asking for all this money. But I promise you, I do try to have that conversation, and it's just tough. But I don't know if that's what attorneys are there for. You know, I always wondered about that. I'm not on the defense side, so I don't know if they even really care about that. Hey, I'm just here for the case. Whatever they do, that's on them. You know, I don't know.
No, you're definitely not there for that. But somewhere within your spirit, you may feel, you know, sometimes you may feel like, oh man, you know, that shouldn't have went down like that or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. This is a question.
So like I had a guy who was involved in a crash, and you know, through this process of discovery, you know, after we sue somebody, we're able to obtain discovery or information about the driver and the company. And so through that process, you know, I learned that this driver, he had an eye doctor. He wasn't wearing his eyeglasses at the time. And so, you know, I tried to have a conversation, you know, with the defense lawyer, you know, about that. And I'm like, you know, maybe you can talk to your client about that, because that seems, you know, to be a pretty simple fix. You know, he's got he needs to wear glasses, but he's operating without it. And so I don't know if those conversations are even taking place. You know, but like I said, I'm not on the defense side, so I don't know what goes on over there.
So hold on, the incident occurred based off his vision?
Yeah, so you know, he couldn't see. I mean,
it's okay.
I looked at because when we you know, we were I already knew it was going to be all bad, because
be all bad.
When we asked,
you walked in there like this.
Yeah, when we asked for certain information, and then they give us everything but this one thing, I'm like, oh, that one thing must be pretty important. So let's really go after that. And so when I'm looking at his prescription, I'm like, his prescription is worse than mine, and I know I'm blind. And so I'm like, you operating a 18-wheeler without some glasses is crazy. You know? and so I'll try to have a conversation with defense counsel, and I'm saying, bro, like, you don't understand. My prescription is bad. I can't see this far ahead of me. Okay. But you know, like I said, I don't know if as defense lawyers that's something that, you know, they're within the scope of their representation. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah. What's the craziest thing you've seen, Sophia, without naming any names, like, you know, without saying any specific details to put anybody out there? Like, what's something that you've seen somebody do that was so like obvious? Like, why would you do that? Like, come on, seriously.
The craziest thing, it wasn't really. This one just always sticks to me, and I think I talked about it at Trucker also, was the Mad Dog.
What was it?
Mad Dog nickname. Like, it just.
Okay, tell the story.
So the driver, that was his nickname, and the plaintiff's attorneys found it, and you know, he was very proud of that nickname, so he didn't shy away from it. But that's one where I kind of wish I was like, hey, you might not want to.
So he was calling himself Mad Dog in the court?
Yeah.
He's like, refer to me as Mad Dog.
Yeah.
Not Malcolm.
So that was used, like, you know, it was a whole road rage story.
Oh, wow. And he was the CDL driver, and he's Mad Dog.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
people
not good.
Have this bad perception of trucks and trucks drivers, and now, you know, you're able to tell the jury that this evil truck is being driven by Mad Dog.
Right, right. Because ultimately, you got to tell a story, right? That's what, you know, representing somebody is creating a narrative.
Yeah. So that was probably like the worst thing. I mean, there you know, the obvious bad things are like the failed drug tests and things like that. But that one always sticks out to me because it was such an easy fix. And I think just like, coaching could have fixed that, but that definitely always sticks out to me.
Yeah. How many times have you represented people with drivers who have failed drug tests and are still on the road?
Not often.
I was going to say, because that's crazy if that's the case.
Not often. But there's one I could think of where the driver just didn't want to take a test because he said, if I take this test, I'm going to fail it.
Right.
But I don't typically see that.
And if that happens to anybody out there, you should fire that driver immediately. I mean, if anybody refuses a drug and alcohol test, I mean, that's grounds for termination, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anything you want to add, Kamard?
What I'll say is this, right? My biggest take is I am grateful that you were able to assemble this group, because I definitely think that for anybody that's listening and really looking on the trucking side to improve their company from a safety compliance standpoint and not have to go up against Mr. Witherspoon, which would, in my opinion, not be a good thing. I think that there's some actionable takeaways, right? Soliciting the services of Ms. Bernard and anyone else that may be in their local jurisdiction that can help with that so that they're ahead of the schedule. And I am definitely not of the mindset that the accidents are just like something that happens, because everything causes something to happen. But what I will say along that line is that, like the gentleman Mr. Witherspoon referenced, that is driving an 18-wheeler without glasses and has a worse prescription need than what Mr. Witherspoon says his is, right? I imagine he isn't just operating an 18-wheeler. He's in a passenger vehicle as well. And so my thing is that for all of us, we share the road together. Like, that is just what it is. I feel we all could be better. The distracted driving is absolutely a big issue, not just for somebody operating an 18-wheeler, but again, us in passenger vehicles, right? And so I just feel like, what can we do collectively to get it to a point where, because obviously we're not under the same regulation as somebody that's under behind the 18-wheeler. How do we get the passenger vehicle drivers, which we all are, as well as 18-wheeler drivers? How do we get the awareness, the advocacy, the seriousness of commitment around being better behind the wheel? Because ultimately, there are tons of accidents that happen that are just passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle. And I'm of the mindset that whether it's this Smith testing that you guys, you and Eric went through, what's it called?
Smith system.
Smith system,
yeah.
Or something to that effect. I think we all could benefit from that type of education, because you two sit in a specific seat that the other three of us and maybe other viewers, I would imagine, don't have that background and have that understanding. Because I was literally talking to my mother the other day about, if I were in politics, one of the things that I would be pushing would be on an annual basis for there to be some type of continued education around the driver rules and the signage, because I am very much so of the belief that there's a lot of people who took that stuff years ago and it's an afterthought now. And case in point, we're getting on a on-ramp to get onto the interstate, and the lady comes to a complete stop. Wow. Not because there was other traffic coming. I mean, the highway was pretty empty, but I don't know if she perceived the yield to be a stop or what it was, but that absolutely could have caused an accident between a backup of just passenger vehicle drivers. And so all I'm saying is, whether it's that system that you guys have as an education, or that is, again, some type of continued education, no different than for attorneys, no different than for insurance people, finance people, right? Like, I just think we all need to treat the road with more respect and have more courtesy around what it is that we can do to not be the culprit for an accident happening. Because like Mr. Witherspoon said, I mean, there's something that led to this, right? For sure. It didn't just happen. Like you said, Rahmel, a vehicle didn't just fall out the sky. So that's my only take on this conversation, but I'm grateful that we were able to have it, and you guys were able to come on and illuminate a lot of the things on both sides of how it works, because I do think that we collectively can be better from the business side and put those small, medium, and large carriers in a better position if they do adhere to the steps that they can take. But I just do know that I'm not of the mindset that every accident caused, this Angie Stone one aside, just generally speaking, where a truck is involved, it was the truck driver's fault. That's just my belief, my take.
100%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Can I add to that, Rahmel? Can I add to that? I definitely agree with you. I think awareness and education is everything. I mean, just when you sit back and you think about what we're doing right now and what we're talking about, where do you see this information at anywhere else? You don't really see it at all. I personally had created a curriculum, and I kind of solicited to, saying drivers, CDL companies, so the drivers can get the information that I was giving out in addition to what they was learning to get their CDL. And no companies, as much as they charge, nobody wanted to pay for the information. In addition to that, one of the things that I try to target and tackle when I do speak from that, I try to literally show real stories, saying on what happened. And like I'm giving you an example, it was this one young lady years ago. She had just left Easter Sunday with her family. She was rushing to go meet her friends to hang out for Sunday fun day. And she, from based on witness, she had her visor down, and it looked like she was doing some makeup on her eyebrow. On her lashes. And the sun was beaming as she was traveling westbound. The sun was like beaming in her face. And she essentially, I'm assuming, didn't see the red light. So she proceeded through the intersection, and 18-wheeler was traveling southbound and pretty much T-boned her, where her car pretty much hit a light pole and crushed her. And so, but again, something like that was something that I actually, it was this one particular African-American CDL school out of Georgia. They actually had brought me in, and they had me in for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then they had end up cutting budget. And when they cut their budget, they cut me from doing that. And that was one of the actual videos and stories that was within my PowerPoint that I spoke about, saying, and and the reason why I spoke about it, because I was just trying to make awareness of it, saying, to bring light to it or whatnot. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing there, Eric, is it doesn't seem like safety is a priority ultimately, right? You just gave 2 instances where one, you were working with a company, they cut budget because that wasn't more important than whatever else they had to spend money on. You were offering training around it. People didn't want to pay for it. So we have to make safety a priority. I think that's what I take away from what you just now kind of said. So Sophia, you wanna give us some kind of parting words and just kind of tell people how they could connect with you and learn more about your services and what you do?
Yeah, I appreciate you putting this together. I think we had some really good dialogue. Even though we're on opposite sides in the room, I would love to work with you. I think you provided some really good insights. Yeah, so I'm on my firm website is Taylor Nelson. You can email me at sbernard@taylorlawpl.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I think that continuing to have these dialogues is really a benefit to the industry as a whole, regardless of who's having it, whether it's you're hearing from the plaintiff's side or we're discussing it together. But I think even just having Eric who does DOT, having Kamard who has a tire business, truck and tire business. I think having all of us together, continuing these dialogue is essentially really beneficial to the industry.
100%. I agree. Naru.
Hey, I appreciate this this opportunity to educate the audience. When you listen to commercials and watch television or on social media, you see all these cheesy lawyer commercials that kind of paint the trucking industry in a really negative light. What I think needs to happen is, I think the trucking industry, and I know it's non-traditional, I think the trucking industry needs to do the same thing to kind of help educate consumers. I really do think that there's an opportunity for Miss Bernard and defense lawyers or people who work with the trucking company to get the messaging out that, hey, this is a problem. For example, you mentioned blind spots earlier. I don't know if people know what blind spots are. I don't know if they know where they are with truck companies. I don't think think people know that truckers do have blind spots, and so they need to know that. I don't think that they know that when the weather conditions are bad, that these big old trucks they can't stop as fast as they when the roads are dry. But I think that somebody on the other side, like these plaintiffs' lawyers, needs to kind of get that messaging out to help educate the public on how to be safer when they're out there on the road.
I agree. Let me give some quick blind spot training. If you're
Okay.
driving in your vehicle and you look in your rear view mirror and you don't see them, they don't see you. That's your blind spot right there. That easy. Listen, this has been a really dope panel. I want to definitely do this again and keep this going, guys. I appreciate you all for taking very, 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 very valuable time out of your schedules to kind of come together and add so much value to this community. People are going to watch this over time, and I hope they gain value from it. And I just want to thank you all, man. This has been a really dope discussion and a dope panel. And I just really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I echo that, for you guys to join us on the second episode of us putting this thing together and coming with such professionalism, coming with such illumination of the discussion, right? And not, even though Mr. Witherspoon and Ms. Bernard on two different sides, like it wasn't a contentious scenario, right? Like they both spoke very eloquently, and then obviously Eric coming in with those very key pieces on just like real stories of what he's seen as one that's out there on the scene, kind of along the hours of when it really just kind of happened, is amazing. And all I will say is to any carriers out there, okay, listen, if you're not going to fork out the cash necessary to be able to bring on Ms. Bernard or to be able to bring on Eric that can really shore up your safety, your compliance, and put you in a situation where you're not in a suit, then pay the price for Mr. Witherspoon, because I promise you it's going to be way more. And to me, that trade just doesn't make sense as somebody that's in business for themselves. So I would advise all of you to definitely look to get those two and others in their capacity that can assist, because y'all heard one of the biggest deals Mr. Witherspoon closed, $158 million. And, you don't want to go up against that guy because he's relentless. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it. You can tell.
I can feel it too. I can feel it too.
Hey, anytime you're feeling it, hey, that's not my job. I don't go there for that. That's not what they pay me to do. My side doesn't pay me for that. So if you want to roll those dice and go up against that guy, Godspeed.
100%. I agree. Listen, I'm going to put everybody's links and contacts in the descriptions for this video, so you'll be able to find that there. Man, this has been dope, man. Second episode, we made it. We're going to continue to do this every single week, and I hope that you guys will come back and join us. I know there's plenty of opportunities that we're going to need some type of legal counsel, so we'll be definitely calling on you guys. You guys are family, so I thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. For sure.
All right, y'all, we gonna get out of here. Eric, you have something to say?
No, just make sure that you connect with me and Nuru. Nuru, he do a lot of great things that I think that you'll be interested in, and definitely want to try to grow that relationship with you two, and then Sophia as well. Maybe Nuru, we'll bring Sophia over to our side. We have you hitters over there.
I was bring you to this side. I was like, you only do places for
He's trying to bring each other over to the dark side. How about that?
We gonna do a follow-up episode with Sophia. Gonna be like, I'm with the plaintiffs now.
Keep that thing balanced, Sophia. Keep that thing balanced now.
Keep it. It's so dope. How many opportunities do you really get to have? Like Kawar was saying, like two opposite sides being able to be friendly, and then who knows what becomes of this situation. You guys are going to connect outside of this, and who knows how you'll be able to add value to each other in the future. So that's what this is all about.
Said, like they don't look like us. So when you said that, I heard that. I was like, yeah, because even on my side, the defense side, obviously, like my clients don't look like me, and so it was really dope to see a trucking attorney, plaintiff's attorney that looks like you, because I don't see that often. So
what city are you in? What state are you in?
So I'm in Florida, Tampa, Florida, but I try cases all over.
Okay, all right. My primary residence is in Delray.
Okay.
So I'm not too far from you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, there we go.
My family's I grew up. Well, I didn't grow up, but when I left Philly, I went to Port St. Lucie, so I'm very familiar with South Florida, and I go down there like all the time, especially with that new Bright Line. I love the Bright Line.
See, there it is.
There it is. You already got it halfway there, Naru. She's coming over to the other side.
Yeah, I saw that.
He set the trap. He set the trap.
You know, my brother's actually on the other side.
Oh, your brother's an attorney as well.
Yeah, he mostly does criminal, but when he does, you know, outside of criminal, he's on the other side. And then I have a cousin. I tried to bring her into this side, but she didn't like billable hours, and so she went back.
Got it. So you got a family full of attorneys. Look at that. Your brother, your cousin.
You know,
man, I hate to mess with y'all.
Doctor, lawyer, or you're a failure.
That's it. That should be the standard at the base, right? That needs to be the standard. I love that.
Yeah.
100%.
Mr. Witherspoon, Miss Bernard, and Eric, man, this is probably the most secure we will ever feel on a call. God, we protected. We're good to go. Which way?
That's a fact. Yeah. We good. Either way it goes, we good.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, listen, we'll make sure we all get connected behind the scenes. You know, I'll make sure y'all have each other's contacts and so forth, and y'all connect, man. Do some work. I love to see that. And yeah, I think we out of here, man. We've been on for an hour and a half. We're gonna keep this thing going. Next Wednesday, you'll see us with another dope topic, some more dope people, and you'll see this group back again soon, man. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are out.